Welcome to the Wildlife for You podcast and the Old Man Johnson series. You so wish you could hear this, Stephanie. It's our new intro music. It's banjo playing. It's perfect for Old Man Johnson series. So you'll hear it once we go put this to publish. So,
The
all right, let me stop it
anticipation
and
is.
I will cue you. You're on, Steph.
Oh, wow. Okay. The anticipation of hearing this new banjo music is just absolutely killing me. I'm sure you can tell.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just so you know, it was free software
Royalty free,
licensing. I made
copyright free.
sure that
Okay.
we could use it. I didn't steal like any famous musicians' music. So
That's,
I think we're good to go. But
we're good
anyway,
to go.
we're
Yeah.
going to shoot a podcast now.
We're okay. We're going to shoot a podcast. All right. Well, you know what? I've been in a mood today. I should probably warn you about that. I have
Good.
totally been in a mood. I don't know about that. So I guess I want to start off by saying some of our listeners, they probably feel like we talk about your pet peeves, and then you go on some wild tangent while I sit here and contemplate why we're still friends, while you carry on. But I think today, if you're cool with it, I would like to start the episode off and introduce the topic by going on a short rant of my own. So, what you think?
Well, based on your height, I think a short rant is pretty much on brand for you, Steph.
If you're trying to make a joke, I think it just went over my head.
As do many things in this world.
I'll pretend you're still my best friend for a second and that we're still talking because I need to get this rant out.
Okay, fine. Go rant away. I think you owe me a couple of those at least.
A few hundred more like, but anyhow, okay. So one of the things that really chaps my bum, and this has been on my mind a lot lately, is how we humans are so smarmy that we think we can look at something as complicated and intricate as nature and then just predict that whatever change we decide to run willy-nilly with is going to result in whatever predetermined change we so amazingly thought up.
All right, let me see if I get this. So, kind of what you're saying here, Steph, is us humans, we're pretty terrible at predicting consequences in nature.
That is exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is this is the Wildlife for You podcast where we're doing kind of like this old man Johnson approach. Like how this podcast is supposed to like debunk misinformation as it pertains to nature and wildlife. So I'm trying to figure out how that fits in.
Okay, actually, I think this plays in perfectly into the Old Man Johnson concept because it kind of sets the stage as to why all of these fallacies and false beliefs are even out there. Don't you think?
Not following just yet. Hopefully I'll
Okay,
get there.
it's simple, right? So like I started off by saying that we as humans often look at something super complicated like nature and predict what's going to happen and then we run all willy-nilly with that. Doesn't that kind of sound familiar?
Yeah, that's kind of the epitome of Old Man Johnson. Because what he does, and again, it's a euphemism for, is that the right word? A euphemism?
Yeah.
Sounded good.
Well,
Sounded in context.
we'll roll with
Anyway,
it.
Old Man Johnson is the character we use to describe some of these legends and lores and beliefs we get in the natural world. And so what he does, he often takes things he doesn't understand and boils them down into these easy to digest, but sometimes totally false concepts.
Exactly. Like I know this is a Tennessee thing, but have you ever heard anything about like old timers trying to predict winter by cutting a persimmon fruit in half?
I am so glad you said that's a Tennessee thing because I thought for sure you would blame that on like a New Yorker like me. But well, the cool thing is persimmon don't even get that far north. I think their northern range is somewhere around Pennsylvania. But the whole persimmon thing, I absolutely love that. That's a good old scientifically sound utensil trick that Old Man Johnson uses. And so,
Mm.
for those that don't know, like if you cut a persimmon fruit in half and you look at the insides and you can kind of see these things on the inside of the persimmon fruit, if you see a spoon, supposedly it's going to be like a really bad winter because apparently that spoon kind of represents a shovel and you're going to have a really, really bad winter. Another option, utensil wise, is if you see a knife, supposedly, again, because Old Man Johnson is all supposedly, but if you see a knife within the persimmon fruit, you're going to have like a really, really cold winter because that knife kind of signifies like brisk cutting, hence knife, cutting cold winds. And then occasionally, and just so you know, I've looked at persimmon and I've seen spoons before. I think I saw a knife, but I never saw the third option. The third option is if you cut in and you see a fork.
Wait. So you're saying if you see a fork, then you're forked?
Yeah, you are forked that winter. No, Goober. Actually, it actually means it's going to be a fairly mild winter. I know it doesn't mean that, but that's what the saying goes. But as you can tell, there's a crazy amount of science that went into this persimmon method. But what's cool now that I think about it, what's even crazier than that, that was even too complicated for some folks because I think Old Man Johnson's brother Jeb, he created another favorite method, one that involves your favorite critter.
Henry Cavill?
I don't even know who that is, but I imagine
Oh,
it's
oh, oh. No, you did not. Oh my God, he's
understand our listener
Superman.
or our listener might not know who it is. So is that some Hollywood heartthrob or something?
He was Superman before this new guy.
Oh,
And then, but he's also the Witcher. He's the,
okay.
oh my gosh,
Knowing our clientele, our listeners, our followers, the only Superman you could have mentioned was
Christopher
Christopher
Reeves.
Reeves.
Yeah. Just for the record, if our listener is in fact Marcia, she knows.
Yeah, if she's under 65, she knows. So anyway, yeah, no, I wasn't even talking about your favorite critter. I'm kind of talking about the four-legged kind that you typically like.
You're talking about Phil.
Yeah, good old Punxsutawney Phil, our great weathercaster there.
Okay, so first off, do not go bad mouthing my chubby wubby wubby little bitty bubbies. I mean, love you.
Trust me, I I I know better than that because I last time I teased you about a groundhog, I think I carried around a black eye for about 3 weeks. Anyway, all right, Steph. Where are we going with this? I have a feeling, and this is a guess of mine, but I have a feeling your bum's not chapped because Old Man Johnson wasn't the best weather forecaster.
Dang straight. That does my bum doesn't chap for just anybody. So I mean, I know that Puxatawny Phil isn't the best meteorologist because he's only like 40% accurate over the last decade, which now that I think about it, that actually kind of puts him on par with current day meteorologists. But actually, just for the record, Staten Island Chuck, I don't know if you looked at his prediction, but Staten Island Chuck is like 85%. So yeah. But anyway, according to Noah, by the way, just in case you didn't ever go look at groundhogs because this is a thing with me,
Time
there's
out.
actually
I'm throwing a flag. What is
okay.
NOAA for our listeners?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric
Atmosphere
Organization. It's part of
Administration, I think.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, it's NOAA. But anyway, NOAA actually said that there's like if you look at their stats, there's actually 16 better prognosticators than our buddy the woodchuck Phil. So that makes me wonder why he's the one that's so popular and why everybody always goes straight from like him because he's like maybe he's like the Milli Vanilli of the groundhog world and he just fakes it to make it. But anyway, truthfully, I am not trying to call one person out. I am actually calling out with my rant humans in general.
Gotcha. So again, let me know if I'm following here. You're kind of talking about how human, like our species, were so naive. Well, maybe naive's not the correct word here.
I think you're trying for egotistical, arrogant, hubris, maybe. I'm viewing.
I know what those words mean, but just so you know, I can't stand the word hubris because it just it doesn't it's it just doesn't sound like what it means because it's like, oh, you got a piece of hubris on your lip. So anyway, you are correct. Those words are much better. The egotistical, the hubris, but what it boils down to is us humans. We think we know everything, or maybe not everything, but rather we think like we know what's going to happen in nature whenever we begin to tinker with things, and we've been doing it for a long time. Which come to mind, this reminds me of something you said on the last podcast where you were calling out that Rachel girl. Tell me about your friend Rachel.
Yes, yes. So you're talking about Rachel Carson, and yeah, actually, we talked about her in the last episode, and actually her book. So she wrote this book in like 1962 called Silent Spring, and the name of it actually became, and the reason why it was Silent Spring is because there was no standard noises that you're used to hearing in spring. I mean, when the winter finally thaws and spring is finally on us, what are things that audibly call out to you? Kind of a joke
Spring
there.
peepers.
Well,
Spring
you got
peepers, the frogs,
you got
geese
frogs, you've got
coming back,
insects. Yep,
birds.
you've got lots of birds, lots and lots of birds. And actually, Rachel Carson's thing was primarily focused on the birds because they weren't chirping. So lo and behold, some research takes place. And when we started, what she actually kind of put two and two together is we started using DDT. And I know we can probably talk about this a lot, but we started using DDT a lot back right around World War I time, so in the early 1940s. And we were doing that because what do mosquitoes carry that humans don't like to have?
Diseases.
Well, do you think of one in particular that mosquitoes are kind of notorious for carrying?
Malaria.
Yes. So we actually started spraying DDT around to kill off mosquitoes because they didn't want people to get malaria. Plus, we're in the middle of World War II. So that's kind of a thing. The problem is we we thought we were doing a good thing, right? Like we as humans, we said, "Oh, well, mosquitoes cause malaria. Let's get rid of the mosquitoes, then we'll remove malaria from the equation so we don't have to worry about that. And it'll be just fine." Well, lo and behold, it's not just fine. You've got all of these other insects are dying off as well. And this isn't just DDT, even though that is the main one. But and that's the one that she focused on. But you've got all of these other, I guess, is the word bycatch here? Is that an appropriate word for all of the things we
But
are accidentally
bycatch,
catching?
yeah, bycatch is a great biological term that generally refers to animals that are caught in, like when you're
Nets.
fishing, when you
Yeah.
catch fish that you don't intend to catch. So whether or not you're fishing or trapping, it's unintended animals that are caught in a trap. It's similar to what you're referring to. I don't know if bycatch would be the best word for it, but I totally get what you're saying. And
Yeah.
before you go too much further, DDT, I'm not even going to ask you what the acronym stands for. We're not going to call it, but just so everyone knows, DDT is this chemical that was applied as an insecticide. When you're raising crops, a lot of agricultural fields that they will spray lots of insecticides to make sure that the insects and other things aren't destroying the crops. And DDT was this miracle chemical that came out, like you said, around World War II or so, and it
Hmm.
worked phenomenal. But we didn't really know the other impacts from DDT. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Nope, that's okay. And it's actually I think it's dichlorodephanyl really long trichloroethane or something like that. But it's synthetic, like you just said.
I was trying
It's
to save
odorless.
you.
I would I don't mind. At least you're not making me say that one word that I can't ever say. But so yeah, we developed that to combat malaria and typhus and all of these agricultural pests. And we thought we were doing a good thing, but then we start to realize that we're not just killing off those mosquitoes. It has this huge effect. So I mean, somebody it chaps my bum hardcore that somebody said, you know what, this is going to kill mosquitoes. Let's not even consider all the pollinators. Let's not consider the bees, the honey bees that are going to be, killed by this. And then think about all of the things that live off of these insects,
Mhm.
or when the insects die and they fall into, the water, the fish are going to eat them. And, so it's this whole kind of cascading effect. and some of it they should have seen, right? Like, who doesn't spray something out in the air and think about the other things that are going to be buzzing through there that you rely on?
Now, I'm going to throw a comment in here because I was thinking about this uh, just the other day. Is we see these things like we tend to try to predict these cascades in nature. But I will tell you, Steph, we're biologists. That's kind of what our job is. Some of these other folks that may be designing that chemical, their goal is to kill insects. And so they're not concerned about what's going to happen to the fish or the birds or anything like that. And so I can I'm not defending them at all because it was a horrible cascade that occurred. But on the front end of that, they were just trying to figure out how to wipe out mosquitoes. And so to them, it's like job well done.
I mean, and to the guy that developed DDT, oh, kudos to him. Job well done. It did a fantastic job at killing mosquitoes and everything else. But to the people who are the ones who are supposed to be responsible before we loose said science upon the world, that's really, and I could so go on yet a whole nother tangent about this, but that's what happens, right? Like there's got to be a governing body, and we like to think that we actually have the knowledge and the level of understanding to be able to be that governing body, and that just it kills me. So back to Rachel Carson real quick. So what actually the kind of the where Rachel Carson's book probably got its biggest notoriety is because at the end of the day, the bugs are dying, bugs fall in the water, fish eat bugs, fish build up a concentration of DDT in their bodies. And this is again skipping by so many other relevant creatures. But at the end of the day, bald eagles are highly fish eaters. I won't use the big P
Piscivorous.
word. I wasn't going to use the
Piscivorous.
big P word. I wasn't going to use the big P word. I was trying to. I
I'll
was I
use
was
it. I'll
making a.
use it.
So
Teacher,
yeah.
teacher.
So they primarily eat fish, and a lot of the fish that they eat is also carrion, and then they steal it and all of that stuff. No, I'm not going to say the other P word. Um, do you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
I missed it.
It's not the P word. It's the kleptoparasitism word that
Oh,
I
the
had to
K word.
practice. But yeah. So but anyway, so it ended up impacting the amount of calcification in shells and, or in the eggs shell. So it ended up having a major impact on the overall decline of eagles that we saw across the nation. So, and that was, so we finally outlawed DDT, I think in 1972-ish. You'll have to check my math on that one. But so you figure we outlawed this stuff. We started in the 40s. By the 70s, we decimated so many different species in addition to mosquitoes. And in the 1970s, we banned it. And eagles are just now really starting to make,
Mhm.
their presence known again. So you're talking almost what? You're talking almost 100 years in that span. And look at the amount of damage that we did in that short little piece of that and how much longer it took to recover from it.
Well, one of the things that I'm going to mention, because you brought it up, it frustrated you that there was no governing body, like no oversight for, hey, what's going to happen if we use these things? And that was one of the greatest benefits of this book coming out, is that it brought to light the negative aspects of some of these chemicals we were using. And do you know what governing agency was born out of this?
I do, the EPA, so the Environmental Protection Agency.
Yep. And so now, whenever industry is doing anything that's going to have an impact on the environment, there are regulations, like strict regulations they got to follow, or else they get sued, they get fined. And so, thankfully, this book by Rachel Carson really shed some light on some of the atrocities that were taking place by industry that was impacting the environment. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess long story short, we humans sometimes completely miss the mark when it comes to predicting what Mother's Nature's response is going to be to something we do.
well, can I tell you about some ass chapping now that we're getting into the nitty gritty of things?
I think our discussion helped me soothe some of my personal chappiness. So, yes, what's getting your bum chappy?
Well, we mentioned how we humans, we screw up sometimes. Heck, you could say we screw up a lot. But what has me worried lately, especially like really, really lately, if you catch my drift, I swear over the last few years, Steph, it seems like our society, and I'm talking about the American society here, we've kind of taken a turn for the worse because it seems like more and more people are in this all out war against science. Like they treat science as the cause of our problems.
I I know what you're saying. Like I am picking up what you're laying down because I mean, as if we would even be here as a society if we didn't have science. It has literally been the reason why us humans have excelled and separated ourselves from the other species.
Well, the jury's still out whether or not that's a good thing because I think some other species are better than humans at like just living and not doing damage. But anyway, I couldn't agree more with what you said about science being necessary for literally the creation of our society. But the thing that, like I said, chaps my ass is there's this anti science sentiment that's pervasive and it's quite scary. And I'm not talking about things in general. I'm even talking about the wildlife world.
All right. So give me some details. What you're referring to?
Well, in my little microcosm of the wildlife world, I deal with a hard science, the science of wildlife biology. You know, like the peer-reviewed sciencey stuff.
So yeah, before I know exactly what you're talking about, but I suspect that some of our listeners don't understand the difference. Like you say a hard science and they're thinking that's that one's just hard because it's mathing and it's complex. So I guess the two things you're going to need to explain for our Gen Pop listener is number one, the difference between a hard science and a soft science, and then number two, what you mean by the concept of science.
Really good points. Let me take your first point, the hard science and the soft science. I actually I probably misspoke with wildlife biology being a hard, like when I think, and tell me if you have a different perception, but when I think of the hard sciences, I'm thinking like math and physics.
Actually,
No.
so yeah, hard sciences are generally the ones where empirical data can be used to substantiate them, whereas soft sciences are more theoretical in nature. So psychology, psychiatry, a lot of
Okay.
those are
Okay.
considered soft sciences.
Let me thank you for that clarification. What I'm talking about, and let me know if there's different words to describe this, but when you're dealing with some of the sciences like physics and math, there are concrete answers. 2 plus 2 equals 4, and you especially if it's mathematically based, you come up with an exact number. What I sometimes struggle explaining to people when you're dealing with life sciences, I guess this is kind of what I should have said instead of hard and soft, but life sciences, when you're dealing with biology, you're dealing with individual organisms that are so complex, so different. There's behavioral differences that there's never, this is what's going to happen because one animal may react different than another animal, or even in the medical human world, some person's body reacts a little bit differently than another person's body. So in those life sciences, especially when we're talking about wildlife management, we can do all sorts of studies, measure empirical data, and when we look at it, we kind of come up with this concept of confidence intervals where we say this is what's likely to happen, but we can never ever say this is what's going to happen. Anyway, the thing that gets me when I'm kind of talking to the general public about science in general is that most people don't even know what science is. They tend to think of it more as a noun, like science is a thing you do. Um, and it's not. Science is more like a verb. In fact, when you do science correctly, there's a whole lot of moving parts in science. Like there's a process you have to follow.
Oh, I bet you're talking about the scientific method.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And do you want to explain it or shall I?
I will let you go ahead and take that first piece of it. There's pieces I'm going to probably want to chime in though. So
Yeah, I encourage you to chime in. So when I try explaining what science is, like I said, a lot of people just think it's this thing that's done. But science is a process. And what you do, and I'll use wildlife biology, or it applies to any other science out there, is you come up with an idea of possibly how something works. And so you come up with a hypothesis. I can say that right. So that hypothesis is whatever you come up with, whatever science you're dealing with, you say, if I do this, then this is going to happen. And then the process of that scientific method is you have to test that hypothesis. And you do studies where you do all sorts of variations to your hypothesis, trying to come up to determine if your statement is correct. And then the thing is, and this is where the scientists know you've got to go further, the public doesn't. But after you come up with your results, you test it, you find out whether or not your hypothesis is true. Sometimes you find out you were completely wrong. Your hypothesis was not true. That is also valuable. Some people say, "Oh, you spent all this money and you didn't even learn it." Yeah, you learned that what you thought was not correct. But if things go the way you hope and the science shows that your statement is true, you then have to verify what you did to make sure it was correct. And that's where I mentioned the peer review. And so you publish your results, you submit your results to, there's all these different avenues of scientific journals that like wildlife has a number of different types of wildlife journals, but you try to get your science peer reviewed. So you get other scientists to fact check you to make sure you did everything right. Did you test the right variables? Did you do this? Did you do that? And so it's not like people could just publish something and say, all right, here's science. It's this is the fact now. There is this process of peer review. And one of the critical aspects of that peer review is not only do you have to do things correctly, but it has to be repeatable. So if someone tests that same thing, their results are going to come back pretty much what your results came back. And so science is not a simple, oh, you did that, you call it science and you're done. It is a long process. And that over time, and we're going back to human society, over time, that's how we develop like bridge building, like engineering, all this stuff. We learn through these processes. But where I'm going with this right now is the public thinks science, it's bad when we do science, and that irks me to no end, Steph.
So I I don't disagree. I think
Correct
that
me anything I said
so
that you might
okay.
have caught.
Because I'm gonna, because that's keep in mind though. So like I have the benefit here because I did that whole school thing more
Yeah.
recently than you. And just for the benefit of our listener, I'm not referring so much so to like elementary and high school, even though you did predate me in those things, just to
By
get my
like
moment.
2 months.
But yeah, but anyway, because I did the wildlife biology college thing a whole lot later. So I think that the only things I would probably clarify is that when you're forming that hypothesis, so essentially you observe something, right? So then you're forming your hypothesis, and then you have to design, like you were saying, design and conduct your experiment. And you got to like detail the crap out of that, right? Like, and you got to figure out your controls. But at the end of the day, the thing that they beat into my head in school repeatedly was that we're never actually proving our hypothesis to be true. We're
The
either
null,
supporting our hypothesis or we're refuting our hypothesis. Because at the end of the day, the goal of science is to keep building on that knowledge base that we've kind of gotten. So, you form your hypothesis, which is essentially just your prediction, your if then statement. If I do this, then that is going to happen. You conduct your experiment, then you analyze all the data sets that you got back, determine if it supported or refuted your hypothesis. And then, like you were saying, at that point, then you actually have to share your findings with others in that peer reviewed process. And people have to be able to repeat the same things that you did and get the same results to thereby support it. And then when you started doing all of that stuff, the first thing that you did was you dug through all of that old research that had already been done by peer reviewed to validate, right? So you wanted to build on that knowledge. Your knowledge base is going to fall right into that. It's going to
Yeah.
be somebody else's knowledge base to use later.
You brought up some great points that I wasn't even thinking about, but some people today think it's an endpoint. It's just like a single point along a long process because we will publish and work on the stuff that we know right now. 2 years later, we're going to say, "Oh, we found out more information," and so there's never. It's almost like never an endpoint, especially in this world of wildlife biology. We're just constantly building on our knowledge base.
I think another thing that kind of ties into it to your ass chappiness there is when people are always like, "Well, that's just a theory," and they act like a theory is a throwaway
It's a
idea, you
belief.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah, and you're sitting here thinking, technically speaking, plate tectonics is a theory. We feel earthquakes all day long, but that kind of a thing happens so slowly
yeah,
that you can't empirically validate it. So it's still technically a theory.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
no, and I'm going to go back to a couple of things I mentioned and hopefully clarify because I mentioned a confidence interval when you're dealing with these life sciences and especially wildlife biology. Like I said, animals and populations you can't always predict 100%. And so what is kind of considered like the gold standard is when you develop these studies and you shoot for this 95% confidence interval. So you more or less say that if then statement. And hopefully, if you have a good hypothesis and good study to verify things, you're right about 95% of the time. But there's 5% that you'll be absolutely wrong. And there's nothing wrong with that because animals are different. You can't always predict exactly what's going to happen. But I got to stick with the ass chapping stuff if that's okay. Because I mentioned the 5% that kind of don't fall in your way of thinking.
yeah.
Like a lot of times there's these outliers and people will point to that and they're like, aha, I knew you got it wrong. It drives me nuts because that's completely normal. You look, take Bruno the bear. Remember Bruno who walked from Wisconsin all the way down to Louisiana?
Yep.
Bears don't do that. and my biggest, I'm going to bring up black bear hibernation.
Oh my God. How do you do this on
95% of the
every
bears will be sleeping and hibernating, but a bear will wake up because it was disturbed or whatever, and people will say, "Aha, they don't hibernate." So this gotcha moments aren't really gotcha moments. When people call those out, it's like a clear giveaway. Like you don't really know what science is. So
Yeah. All right. So tell me, do you feel better?
I do. And I'm going to say one more thing. Apologies on the front end. Wildlife biologists, we're humans too. And what I kind of tell people, and I get caught doing it myself sometimes. I sometimes I get overconfident on things, but you can tell a good scientist or a good wildlife biologist because they will use terms like um, "this may happen" or "this is likely to happen." And believe it or not, Steph, I had people like literally blow into me to say, you don't know what you're talking about because you're always using these words like may and likely. You should know. And it's like, again, it's a telltale sign. These people I'm talking with don't understand how science works. And so, all right, my ass is thoroughly less chapped now because I got that off my chest.
I am glad to hear that. And we do have to realize that there are things that have science laws, like the
Mm-hmm.
law of gravity, the
Yeah.
law of inertia, but there's other things, so many, many other. There's very few laws in science and more good concepts,
Yes.
and things like that, or however you would like to phrase that. But
And before we go on, when you were talking before, just describing the process and the method of doing a study, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I wonder how many studies Old Man Johnson does. I think he just comes up with stuff that sounds really good and runs with it. That's what we've
Yeah.
dealt with.
Yeah, I am pretty sure that Old Man Johnson was the original internet, so if Old Man Johnson said it, it must be true.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely. So thank
All
you.
right.
I'm glad I said all that out loud because I sit on that like so many times when I'm going through social media. I'm sorry.
You are a junkie. It's okay. All right. So tell me, we've been at this for probably over 30 minutes now. You about ready to start wrapping this one up? I feel better. You feel
I'm
better.
looking.
Everybody feels better.
I'm trying to like I can't see over my microphone, so I'm looking to see how long we've been in. I don't know.
35 minutes.
But yeah, you're probably right. I think we're ready to wrap this up. So now that we explained our, and like when I say our, I mean humans' imperfections and our sheer inability to grasp the complexity of our natural world, I think that really does kind of lay the foundation for this Old Man Johnson series. So I do thank you for that, Steph, because I think it's pretty good.
Mhm.
Now,
Thanks.
again, when I talk about Old Man Johnson, this is not a knock on anyone's pappy or grandpappy. It's just a way for us to introduce a nature topic that was, or possibly still is, highly misunderstood. And boy, do I got a good one for us next week or whenever we record the next one.
Oh, really? You know how I hate surprises. You're going to tell me what the topic is?
Yeah, absolutely not, because I love getting you all riled. I will tell you this though, if you're lucky, I dread this, but I may whip out the Old Man Johnson voice for next week, and I don't know if I'll do it a weekly thing, but we'll see how it goes next week. So why don't you? I see you're biting your lip. Bottle up that excitement over there because I know it's brewing, and so why don't you wrap us up for this week?
Well, okay, so for starters, I'm just sitting here thinking you're gonna have to put on your Bee Gees pants to make the Olivia Johnson voice again. But just so you know, I am quite literally giddy with anticipation for that old man Johnson voice of yours. So, but before we wrap up, there is one thing that I do want to say about today. So, do you know what today is, Daryl?
Yeah, it's my oldest son's birthday today,
Okay, but what else is today? If you look on a
Groundhog Day.
calendar. Yes. So I would just like to clarify that, and anybody who doesn't know me and hasn't listened to us for ages and ages. So Daryl and I are both predator people. We tend to lean more towards the predators of the animal world, but we still love the cute and cuddly. And my favoriteest of them all is the groundhog. So Daryl, I would just like to say, since you managed to bring bears and hibernation into this conversation, somehow, yet again, it is a natural talent of yours. They've got a groundhog day, but they don't have a bear day.
We're gonna have to change that now, won't we? Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. If a bear comes out of its den, it's what's it do for the summertime? I don't know. People will say bears don't go in dens.
Probably so. Yeah, probably so. All right, folks. So if anybody wants to reach out to myself, Stephanie, or my absolutely brilliant co-host Daryl here, who has a bear problem, um, if you have a question or a topic for us that you would like us to discuss, by all means, feel free to message us either through Facebook Messenger at the Wildlife for You Facebook page or by writing into us at wfyquestions@gmail.com. So WFY Wildlife for You, but WFYquestions@gmail.com.
Thank you. Last time you did whiskey fox
Whiskey Foxtrot Yankee.
Yankee. Yeah. I was going to say, just do wildlife for you. But thank you for that. And yes,
Mhm.
folks, we would absolutely love to hear from you. And we thank you. There might be two by now. We thank both of you for listening. And remember, when it comes to wildlife, your knowledge often means their existence. So thank you and be well.
Peace.